Hi guys. Some of you might have seen this presentation a little bit before previously when the old requirements for completing an EPC were there. I'm just trying to give you a little bit of an update of what's new, what the assessor has to do now to complete an EPC, but also to give you some tips on what's included on an EPC, the positive and negative measures, what you should and shouldn't do to your property to help your property get a higher rating. I mentioned there some of the rules on producing an EPC. It's C rating at the moment is still with the requirement in 2030, what you've got to get your property up to. It's E at the moment. As soon as there's more information on that, I'll pass that out to let you know what the changes are. But I just want to give you an indication of what can help and what it won't really have an impact. So a lot of the positive measures around insulation and heating control, so loft insulation, cavity wall insulation, the glazing in the property, the heating controls, so simple things like a room thermostat, thermostats on your radiators, timers, modern boilers obviously as well. Avoiding electric heating. You'll have electric heating in a lot of properties, but panel heaters aren't great, but storage heaters are a little bit better. So there's things like that that'll be useful on the heating side. But the insulation side's a big thing, and it'll have a big impact on the EPC rating. Cavity wall insulation is a more common one, but for the older properties in Jesmond, or you might have Chilly Road, or along Benwell where it's all solid walls, it's hard to do the insulation at the property when they don't have a cavity there. You can do it internally, PIR board like an insulated plaster board, or you can just board the wall out and put timbers in there and put proper insulation in there. That'll help. But you have to be able to see it as an assessor. You have to see that when it's covered up and then it's skimmed and it's painted. As an assessor, we can't see it included in the EPC because it's been covered over. So you've got to either get the assessor there or take some photographs in a particular way using a particular app to time and date stamp them, and GPS location stamp them as well. So I'll cover that a little bit as well. The wall insulation is quite tough to do to solid walls because you've got to take skirting off, radiators, sockets, all of those sort of things would have to be taken off, the insulation put on, then put back in place. So it is a big job if you want to do that. So if you're going to do it, you'd probably be doing that before you move somebody in to really impact on the EPC rating. So loft insulation, the loft floor, when you get into the hatch, the bit you see on the loft floor is what makes all the impact on an EPC. Those beams, when you're doing them and putting the spray foam insulation in there, that makes no difference for the EPC whatsoever. It's pointless doing it. Unless you put a room up there and you're using that as the insulation that we're measuring from the inside to the outside, that has no impact whatsoever. It's not good for anything. You probably won't get a mortgage on it if you try to sell it, or Paul will tell you a bit about that as well. As I've been to one where the customer, I think it was in Bladen, the wholesale fell through as a result of that. He did sell it in the end. I think there's one company that will accept it.
There's two lenders.
There's two now.
Two lenders who will take spray foam insulation.
Yeah.
But the rate's not present. They charge for the risk.
Yeah. So the guy who was selling it, he had to drop the price of the property by about £7,000, I think it was, to get the sale to go through, because the person was buying it wanted the property and was prepared to take that on. So don't do that. It's not good for anything except maybe hiding cannabis farms. But that's not me giving you tips there. So, but basically the loft floor is the key bit. That's stopping the heat getting out. That there is like wearing your hat 6 inches above your head and not on your head itself. So that avoid that where you can. I mentioned before the solid wall insulation, and when you're doing it in the property and then skimming the wall and then painting the wall and you can't see it, what you can do is this app, Solocator, it's 90p. If you're going to be doing work and you want to document the work that you've done in your property before you cover it over, and you want to be able to show the assessor this when they arrive after the work's done, the assessor would normally prefer to see it and photograph it themselves. But this is the second best. If you can get that app on your phone, it'll stamp the photos. So you can see these here. I did one up in Newton by the Sea. It tells, I'm taking a photograph there of the insulation thickness. and it's got the location and the time and the date and everything recorded inside the app. The assessor will want a copy of those photos sent over. If you do the work, they probably won't accept anything else. So get, for the sake of 90 pence, I would get the app if you're going to do some sort of work like that. That's the same for flat ceilings. So if you put a new flat ceiling on an extension and you put an insulation in the roof, the assessor again can't see that insulation when they get there like a normal loft. So they'd want the photographs either from the outside or from the inside, whichever way you put the insulation in. Get that up and take the photograph. You can see I'm showing the depth of the insulation and an expanded view of the photo to show it's that property, the thickness of the insulation that's getting done, and obviously documenting that as well. That's the type of photos we would need to include on the EPC when we submit it, because we get audited. And if we haven't got the right information, the EPC will fail, it'll get discarded from the database, and that's not what you want.
Robbie, would you accept in existing properties that are already done if the landlord did a core sample while you were there?
If we can see it and I can get in and measure it, if you're going to cut a hole in it, that'll be okay, but it's not many people want to do that after it's been finished off, so that's the advice.
It's already been done.
Yeah, in some cases you can get sockets off and you can see the insulation on the socket, so that'll work as well. Or the odd time you can get spotlights down and out and you can get in, but it's tricky to photograph it and provide it as evidence in that way. But if you can, then great, yeah.
Naturally, when I do this to my own house, and I get your fantastic company out to assess the insulation that we put on at the time, that's great. In 10 years' time, if you're no longer operating, will another assessor take your word for it or take your report's word for it that you saw this? Because my
Yes.
concerns over the EPC last 20, 30, 40 years, not 10.
The EPC itself now
Yeah.
is only valid for 10 years.
Yeah.
So if an assessor's come to complete a new one, he'll probably want to check it for himself. He won't take any previous evidence. I suppose you're going to have it 12 years, 11, 12 years later. Maybe. If you've got, still got,
Forever, won't you?
if you've still got the photos, I can't see why not if that time and date's stamped. But most of them will want to
Upload them now, so you have to upload the photographs when you submit an assessment.
every single one.
So the body has actually got that evidence already. So when that comes to get redone, surely they need to put something in place where they've already got historic information that you can pull from the portal to see what was already in there.
Well, they might retain it anyway. I think
Yeah.
the rules is to retain it for 7 years.
It would just be crazy.
As an assessor. As an assessor, I've got supposed to keep it for 7 years. But the software that we use to upload it and produce the EPC retains it for us anyway. Yeah. I don't know how far back they're going, whether it's beyond that. But I can't see why not. If they've got it, they should keep it. If the expired one is still on the database and you haven't overwritten it, then hypothetically the information should still be there.
Robbie, when you're uploading all your information, is it going on your portal or is it going on a central portal? So in other words, if you weren't around and the job work was done 8, 9 years ago and your company's no longer there, surely that must be accessible.
Well, it should be on the EPC register. It'll tell you who the assessor was and the date the EPC was done and who they did it through.
Right.
So there's a couple of different providers.
Yeah.
So it'll tell you who it is. So you should just be able to ring them up and say, "Is it there? Can you check it for us?"
The thing you talk about this 90 pence for an app, like we chatted the last time I was here, for the cost involved, it's not easy to just get you out beforehand and then get you out after.
You can do, yeah. I do that anyway. It's just in case I'll be higher.
But it aren't very deadly serious. In the scheme of buying a property, it's a square root and out.
Yeah, that's up to you. I mean, if you want somebody else to just document and do it all, it's fine. I do that anyway. It's just sometimes, like that one there was Anik, for me to go up and I'm saying, well, I'm doing it anyway, but if it's just one flat roof, for instance, the only thing they've got left to do, they might say, well, I'll just take all the photographs and do it. And what I'm saying is just use that and save a double visit. But yeah.
Robbie, sorry, just a quick one. If you've had work done, it's been overseen by building inspector, so they've had to sign it off. So
That'll be okay.
That'll be all right.
The building control completion certificate is enough. So attic bedrooms and things like that. So if you've got a loft conversion and then it's all been skimmed over and painted and it looks fantastic, it's brand new. For a loft conversion, if the loft conversion was done in 1930s or 40s or whatever it is, we know generally there's no insulation, but a lot of people have got internal insulation put in since then, and they can document it. But if it's all covered over, you don't want to cut a hole in it like we mentioned before there, the next step is getting a building completion certificate from the building control office, and that allows us to change the date of the full loft conversion in the system from 1940s or whatever it was when the house was built to when you actually got it done. So that's a useful one. This is just some of the information required now on the additional. So in the past you would get, this is like standard information that you'd pick up on an EPC and what you've got to record. So you'll have the building measurements, the roof space, what the wall insulation is made of, the windows, heating systems, ventilation, conservatories. All of these things are recorded on an EPC just to give you a feel for what information is pulled together. A lot of the extra stuff now is centralising around the windows, the loft and the attic bedrooms. There's a lot more information required now on an EPC than there ever was previously. So it's taking EPC assessors a lot longer and documenting it. It's a little bit ridiculous in my mind because they could kind of wind it and say, well, this is the kind of windows you've got, and they're all in the property, and there's so many walls facing this way, south, east, whatever it might be. What they're asking us to do now is we've got to measure every single window, width, height of every window, the orientation, which is at southeast point and northeast, northwest, every single window in every property, and it takes a lot more time. The glazing gap's got to be recorded. The age of the window is quite a critical one now. So I've done a couple of EPCs this week where they were C previously. I've went back in to do the EPC, and there's no way to prove the age of the windows. So you just have to tick unable to determine the window age. What that's done is it's brought the EPC down from a C down to a D on a few that I've done this week. A lot of the windows have got a date stamp inside the glazing gap there. They'll have it stamped inside, but if we can't prove the date, we have to just say unable to determine, which brings the score down. The newer ones where you can find it, or as a fencer certificate or something, some sort of proof that you've got it, but we've got to prove it.
Does it require the entire window to be replaced, or just the panes to be replaced in order to get that date stamp?
I mean, they're already inside the pane when they're installed. It's inside that little frame there. So are you saying you're on about replacing some of the panes yourself?
Serviceable UPVC windows, and as panes blow, I replace them. That's a lot cheaper than replacing an entire window and frame.
Yeah.
So if this was the one thing that was comparatively cheaply holding one of my properties back from being in the EPCC, I've got a friend in Glazer who will replace all the windows for me, but do I need the panes replacing as
I
well?
don't know. I'd have to ask the question. This has just come in, so, but I can ask the question and grab me card or send us an email or a text or something. And
Can I ask, on my windows, it's actually on the PVC. Would that be acceptable?
I've never seen it on the PVC before. It's normally
Actually
just,
on the side of the PVC,
is it?
the date stamp.
Yeah. I can ask the question with the auditors and see if that's what they'd accept. But yeah, but it's quite a big change at the moment. So I think I did one the day. It was 21 windows. So you're there a lot longer, measuring every.
Get a couple of points for double glazing. So it only used to make a difference of a couple of points on the score.
Yeah, I think it's quite a big change now compared to what it was. The glaze and the loft stuff that I mentioned before. So, but I can actually go and do an EPC and put certain glazing and then change it to see what it was, and see that. So when we can potentially do that in some properties and figure it out.
To see how far it'll push it.
Yeah. This is just some of the information. So every single window, you've got to have that for everyone, just to give you a little bit of a feel for what they're checking when they get there. Light bulbs. So in the past, you would just say there's 10 rooms, there's 10 bulbs, 10 light fittings, and they're all low energy light bulbs. Now you've got to determine which kind of light bulb it is, and you've got to count every single one. So the chandelier type, you can see there's a couple of CFLs and a couple of standard bulbs. You've got to say which bulb in each light. It's absolutely ridiculous, but it's what they want done. So, and again, you've got to count every single spotlight. in every ceiling. So if there's 20 in a big kitchen or diner, you've got to count every single one. And this is the worst one. You see the lights in the plinths in a kitchen. You've got to count how many lights in the plinths. So everything. The strip lights, they don't let you do the strip lights. They miss them. Yeah, but that's just how crazy it's become now. So just to give you a... I'm looking forward to December, put it that way. So the loft conversions I mentioned before about the building control completion certificates, very important if you have getting a loft conversion done that you've got a copy of that for the assessor when they get there, because without that they can't determine the age or when it was done. And now the building regulations, if you say the date range of the loft conversions, the building regulations change over different years and then they increase the insulation levels. So from 1985, cavity wall insulation had to be installed from 1985 in every property. So if the building date of an extension is after 1985, it'll assume insulation. Prior to that, it might not. So these are the reasons that sort of thing is brought in. When we were measuring loft conversions or attic rooms in the past, we just had to measure the loft floor in the bit that you're living in and just put the date of the loft conversion, that was it. Just that floor area is all they wanted. Now we have to measure the stud wall, width and length of that, the sloping sections we've got to measure the ceilings, got to measure the gable, got to measure the party wall, got to measure the dormer sections and work out whether it's 20% of the total floor area. So there's a lot more things coming in that they're asking us to do. So just to make you aware, once we've measured all them, we've got to determine how much insulation's behind each section of them on the ones we can get into. So the assessor could be there a little bit longer when they're doing the EPCs.
Could I ask, what's the relevance of the 20%? Are you wanting under so there's more insulation?
If it's smaller, they don't really take that into account. If it's a bigger dormer window, then it's a different section to measure. So they'll just give you a little bit of it. There's the different data levels in the information that we need. So stud walls in here, the flat ceiling section, all of these different, this is what you've got to fill in when you're there, and these are the different sections of the loft. But that also, it's quite a good visual of that, because it allows you to understand where the heat loss is and the bits that you can concentrate on to help the heat loss in those sections of the roof. If you can get those bits done in there and get them insulated properly and we can get access to see it, it will, even if I don't have the building completion certificate, if I can get access into those areas to measure it, I can improve the EPC rating in the property. So if the flat ceiling's got a hatch like that one has, and I can get in and measure it, great. The stud walls here, if I can get into the little access hatches in these sometimes, I can measure the insulation behind it. These ones are a nightmare, these slopes, you can never really get in there to measure them. And this is classed as the normal loft, the old loft, so it doesn't really make a big difference, but we can get in to measure those bits as well. So all of these affect and help the EPC if we can get into them and measure them.
There's got to be a draft door in there.
It doesn't ask that question, luckily. So, but it's if we can get in and get the measurements of that, your EPC will be a better score. Other things they've included now is ventilation. So the ventilation sections, how many extractor fans in the building, how many cooker hoods are classed as extractor fans. One of the ones that I went to one last week, and it was a mechanical ventilation system for the whole house. It brought the EPC down from a C to a D when I included it, and they'd spent a fortune on it. Yeah, so I think I'd included the fans twice on 2 rooms as well, so that was a negative impact. But just be aware, putting one of those systems in, because I'm not sure if that one was a heat recovery system, but if you've got one that's a heat recovery system as well as taking the moisture out, then that would probably be better. But just to make you aware, that's now included in EPCs as well. If you've got solar panels on your property, if you haven't got this MCS certificate, when the assessor comes, if you don't have that, the assessor can't include that on the EPC. So you might have spent 10 grand on it, but if you haven't got that when they come to do the assessment, you can't include it. So make sure you've got a copy of that as well if you have got that on your roof. And this is just examples of what we've got to document and check when we get there. So I'm just saying it cannot be included without this. So you want the inverters, the batteries, all of these sort of things, the angle of the system on the roof, what kilowatt it is, and photographs of all of that sort of stuff. And the scores, this you might have an EPC that's a score which is a D78, which I was at one last week, which is a D78. All I needed to do on that property to get it up to a C was put a room stat in. So this is the scoring range. Sorry about that image, it was the only one I could find. But theirs was a D68, it was just a flat and it needed a room stat. We put the room stat in and it went up to a D70, I think it was, a C70. So there's some things you can do that will make a difference to whether it's a D or a C, but it'll break the scores down a little bit more. So just be aware of that as well. When you see your old EPC, you might be able to see what level it is a D or an F or whatever it might be. So that should help you have a little bit of an understanding of how close you are to getting it up a level. Yeah.
Are there any sort of online calculators that we can tinker with and give us an indication of what options are?
Not that I'm aware of.
Are a little bit older, and they're saying low energy light bulbs. Well, guess what? We've done that.
Yeah.
And we're now into the realms of solar panels or nothing kind of thing.
I honestly don't know of anything that would help that. That is available for that.
Could I ask, an individual room stat is a benefit, but if you've got the thermostatic ride values on every ride, does that not negate the necessity for that?
No, because that's just giving you control over that individual radiator in that room, the temperature in that room. The room stat, what happens is when the heating's on, you'll set your room stat at 20 degrees. Your heating system will come on, and the second it hits 20 degrees, that's going to send a message back to the boiler saying it's warm enough now, turn off, and it won't come back on, I think, until it's 2 degrees below. I think that's how they work. But the TRVs will give you additional control in each individual room.
Is there any benefit on both?
Yeah, if the heating installer installs a system now to the building regulations, they should have both of them. They shouldn't be fitting them without.
You only needed so many TRVs and they changed that.
They used to just be bedrooms. I think it's every radiator now except the main, it's called the bypass radiator, which means the radiator where the room stat is. The radiator where the room stat is shouldn't have one. Because if you turn that down to 2 and you had a room stat, it's just going to keep chugging away and it'll never reach the temperature. So that's why they say don't have one in that room. I think we're nearly done, guys. There's a couple of schemes available to help you. You might have a tenant who's in receipt of some benefits. Great British Insulation Scheme. Google both of these, the Great British Insulation Scheme, and there's another scheme called the Energy Company Obligation. And I think it's Eco4 at the moment, where you can get funding towards some insulation measures for your property and storage heaters. Think there might be some solar panel funding as well, but it's worth searching that to see. It gets applied for in your tenant's name in a lot of instances, so, but worth checking it out, because if it could save you a good few grand to get a lot of your insulation work done to your property and it's funded, see if you can get it done.
Just a point on that. I don't have anybody on benefits on mine, and when I did not an in-depth search, but when I did a search for it, I just couldn't find any grants personally.
These guys at the back work with the grants, so might be worth having a word with them beforehand. But if you go onto Google, it's Great British Insulation Scheme is one of them. The other one is the Energy Company Obligation.
But they were just for benefit.
Not always, no. I think the Energy Company Obligation one is, if I remember rightly, the customer, if they've got children, they've just got to have a salary less than 30,000 in the household. So that is another route without just being on a benefit. So there's 2 different schemes to look at. There's also other schemes. I think one of them is called LA Flex, which is Local Authority Flex. They can flex some of the funding that they've got to help some people out who are just outside of those schemes but might need some assistance in their property. So LA Flex, you can try with your local council. They might help you out as well, but they don't shout about that one as much as the other 2 schemes. But it's certainly worth Googling them and finding out to see what's available, because different councils in different areas have got different amounts of funding, so it might be worth checking those as well.